Committee, 24th of September 2021. Sorry, yeah, that's it, 21. Just to make you aware, today's meeting will be recorded. Can I also welcome any members of the public and press to today's meeting? Can I kindly ask you to observe the meeting only and not to speak or participate? I would also like to welcome the members who have asked to attend today's meeting, which is Councillor Rob Jones, and I also know that it is his birthday today, so I wish him on behalf of all the committee a happy birthday. Can I please remind you to switch your phone to silent for the duration of this meeting? In addition, can I refer you to the protocol for remote meetings, which have been previously circulated, namely, your microphone should be switched to mute unless you are speaking. Should you wish to speak or ask a question, to make a comment, can you please indicate either via the chat function or by raising your electronic hand via Teams? I will assume that you have all read the paperwork before us today prior to the meeting. Please only use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak as an alternative to the electric and function or raise any technical issues. When asking a question, can you please indicate the page, the number you're referring to? The first item on the agenda is to do the roll call. I am Councillor Sheila Penry, the Chair. I am pleased I will now call on Chloe, the Democratic Service Officer, to take the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. I've marked you as present. Councillor Robert Wood.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Penry, can you mute your microphone because there's feedback?
Pardon?
Can you put your microphone on mute, please?
Sorry, apologize.
Thank you. Councillor Wood, I've marked you as present. Councillor Howard Aubrey.
Present.
Councillor Charlotte Goldsworthy.
Present.
Councillor Scott Jones.
Present.
Councillor Dennis Keogh.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Adam McGrath. Councillor Wyndham Griffiths.
Present, Theo.
Councillor Rosalind Davis.
Present.
Councillor Joe Hale.
Present, Chloe.
And we've had apologies from Councillor Simon Noyle. And lastly, Councillor Stephanie Lynch. And we've got invited member Councillor Rob Jones.
Yes, I'm here, Chloe.
Thank you. And then cabinet members, Councillor Mike Harvey.
Present, Chloe.
We've had apologies from Councillor Annette Wingrave, so stepping in today is Councillor Peter Rees.
Present, Chloe.
Thank you. Officers, we've had apologies from Nicola Pierce, Mike Roberts,
Here.
Dave Griffiths,
Present, Chloe.
Peter Jackson,
Present, Chloe.
Joyce Smith,
Present, Chloe.
Hassan San,
Present.
and Nicola Heaton.
Present, Chloe.
Have I missed anyone? I think that's everyone, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Chloe. I would like to announce the information to the officers and the public that we have chosen to scrutinise agenda item 12, 13 and 14 on the Cabinet Papers agenda. Are there any other items that members wish to scrutinise? I can't see there is. Can members please indicate whether they have any declaration of interest in relation to the items that we have chosen to scrutinise today? The minutes from the 2nd of July 2021 are included on the agenda for approval. Does any member have any comments on the accuracy minutes? Can I please have a proposer and a seconder for these minutes?
I move, Chair.
Thank you. Right. Can I have a seconder, please?
I move, Chair.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you ever so much for that. The next on the agenda item is to select appropriate items for Cabinet Board agenda for pre-decision scrutiny. Please can members now turn to the Cabinet Board papers. The first item we have chosen to scrutinise in the agenda item, which is an information report on the Welsh Government proposal 20 miles per hour default speed limit across Wales. Do officers have anything to add, or shall we move straight to questions?
Thank you, Chair. We're happy to move straight to questions.
Thank you for that. I will now call on my Vice Chair as he has a question.
Thanks, Chair. Question it is around funding. I can see that it says it's going to have an unknown financial impact. Now, we know on enforcement it's a police issue, speeding, but we all know in practice the police can't be everywhere all the time. I just wanted to know whether officers further down the line will be pushing for increased funding for speed cushions and physical restrictions that will slow motorists down. Thanks.
I did some lip reading there, Councillor Penry. If I may come in. Yeah, the intention is from the blanket order is that hard engineering measures aren't intended to go in as part of the wider default 20 mile per hour limit. That said, obviously we're undertaking pilots, or Welsh Government are undertaking pilots across 8 local authorities, of which we are one of them, with specific reference to the Kilfrew community. So there may be money available to treat sort of entry features into communities, sort of forewarning people that they're entering into built up areas when they come off the main strategic routes. So I think the intent is that we move away from the extensive number of speed cushions that would be required, because you can imagine that the length of highway network that will default to 20 mile per hour in Neath per Talbot, and the current plans that Welsh Government have published show about 95% of the road network. You can imagine the sort of costs that we'd be facing across the whole of Wales in that respect. So the intention is not to put in hard engineering measures. I don't know, Chair, if it's appropriate to expand on the finance points that you have raised, because as officers, we have been raising the issue of funding, and the report sets out a number of areas that we are discussing with Welsh Government in undertaking a review of their maps. So there's a huge cost that could be impacting in terms of the quantum of signage that may be required, and the changing of the legislative orders. So, and by that, for example, I mean if we decided, for example, that some of the main roads or strategic routes where we have bus services running, that we may think it would be better to keep the traffic at 30 miles per hour in support of public transport and the movement of freight to retailers and businesses across the county. Then we would have to advertise to request that that road becomes a 30, because in the proposals all roads would default to 20. And the reason we've said that it's we don't know what those costs are at the moment is because it's such an extensive piece of work that we are currently working through. I don't know if Joy Smith would like to add to that, because Joy actually represents the council and leads the work with Welsh Government from our perspective on the work stream. So Joy, would you like to add anything?
To be honest, Dave, I think you've covered it, unless we go into further detail, other than to say we are already lobbying, having long discussions. We are being assured that funding will be available, but at the moment I'm not sure of the mechanism either for that. But as Dave has said, there is going to be some significant work in terms of just supporting those roads that we as an authority might feel we need to maintain at a 30.
I would add, Chair, that there is a meeting coming up with the Deputy Minister, with leaders of councils across Wales and cabinet members, and I'm sure that the discussions I've had with Councillor Harvey, that we will make those points at that minute. Councillor Harvey, I'm sure, will make those points directly to the Minister at that meeting, because I have some reservations about the cost of this to the Welsh nation, really, and how are we going to fund it all.
Thank you for that. Councillor Harvey, would you like to come in as the cabinet member?
I agree with David. I think the costs of it are huge. I just hope that the Welsh Government will pick up the costs. You know, otherwise, how can we as a council afford it? And you know, that is the main issue. You know, I got some other issues with it in respect to some of the roads, which, you know, should they, you know, some perhaps shouldn't even be 30 and you drop them to 20, and that could be an issue as well. But you know, that's for another day. But all in all, you know, I'm supportive of it if it increases road safety. But I definitely have reservations, especially in respect to the cost of it, and you know, and not leading councils, if you like, decide where the road should be 20, just doing it blanket right across Wales. But that's my points, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Harvey. Is there any other member on the committee who would like to ask questions? I can't see there is. This item is for information.
Chair,
Sorry.
David Griffiths has got his hand up.
Who?
David Griffiths.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. I didn't see your hand, Mr. Griffiths. You
Okay.
wish to come back?
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to mention that members may have seen that there is going to be a full member seminar on this subject next week. And we intended to circulate a draft to the Welsh Government consultation that we prepared from an authority perspective. So if obviously members are able to review that before the meeting, what I would say is a lot of the questions in there we're unable to answer as a local authority because they're very personal, they're directed at individuals, and perhaps we would ask members to respond in that respect in terms of the street wards. So I just wanted to flag that with you. And I note, obviously, this is a member information item, but what we intend to do, because of the timing on this consultation, we will take on board all of the members' feedback next week. We'll incorporate that within our consultation. And then what I'd like to suggest to members is that our cabinet member, Councillor Harvey, and the director and myself then have the authority to submit that to Welsh Government, as I say, having taken everybody's feedback next week. So I just wanted to alert you to that. That's what the plan is.
Thank you for that, Mr. Griffiths. I was going to come in to the committee to remind them not to forget the seminar next Monday morning, which is very important for the ones that can attend. Please do attend, because this is a very important seminar. We move on now to the next item. We have chosen to scrutinise an agenda item 13, which is reported the Footway cycleway link to Eglwys, Nunnydd and St David's Park, Margam. Do officers have anything to add, or shall we move straight to questions?
No, I'm happy to move straight into questions, Chair.
Thank you for that, Mr. Griffith. I now call on Councillor Hale.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'd like to, ask the question. How many times has there been a bid for this scheme? And why, if it has been unsuccessful, are we still entertaining it? It was from Welsh Government I'm on about now. Yeah.
If I may come in, Chair. As you will see in the report, we've made a number of bids for safe routes and communities for this project, and we have had grants in the past through Welsh Government for works on the highways down there, but it wasn't specific to the footpath. Now, the reason that we're concerned about this particular site, and it's something perhaps from a planning perspective that I wasn't aware of, but within the LDP, there are dormitory sites across the County Borough Council, which some of which aren't served by footpaths. I think it's fair to say, with the Future Generations Act and how legislation has changed over the years, that these two estates would not have got planning permission if they were coming through the process today, because there would have been a requirement to have safe access routes and footpaths to connect that community. So unfortunately, obviously, this particular two estates have got no safe access way out. So albeit that we've tried several occasions and we've got a long history of doing safe routes in communities right across the county borough in all areas, we were unable to secure it on this occasion. So it left us, from a road safety perspective, with no other option than to ask the council to contribute to the funding of this scheme. The other things that I would add is that there have been some sort of changes as well in terms of HGV traffic movements that we've highlighted within the report, in that the leadership in Bridgend County Council several years ago, probably now, approached us, and they had issues with the HGVs going through the small villages in Pyle. And we did a major project to alter the highway to allow HGVs to access our industrial estate off the Water Street. And what that has meant now is that it's great in terms of the communities in Pyle, because they haven't got the HGVs thundering through the villages there from a community safety perspective. But it does now mean that they are travelling now down the M4 and coming off the junction at Margam, back past Margam Park, and using this route to access our industrial premises. So we've got a lot more HGVs now using that road as well. As I say, we've got a long history of securing and maintaining safe routes within communities. And we feel that this is a site that now requires that for those residents. So I don't know, Chair, if, Councillor Hale, if that's helped to answer your query. Joy may want to add something if I've missed something.
But my understanding is that there are only 8 children that it would be, and those 8 children, as a parent, they're never going to walk to school.
Yeah,
that road, I've been on that road, and when you go onto the A48, you wouldn't want your child to be walking down there anyway. So you're going to build a pavement and spend all that money for 8 children.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me seems
Perhaps if I could come in there, Councillor Hale, what we need to understand is it's not about just the children. They are safe routes in communities. They're for all users and residents within that estate. The school children at that particular site, as you quite rightly point out, do have transport. And in that respect, it's in connection with the way in which they're able to cross the M4, which is a further complication. So, as I say, this is about the wider community. I don't know, Joy, if you want to add to that.
Well, to be honest, Dave, that's what I was going to say. The reason we were unsuccessful, Councillor, when you brought that up right in the beginning with Welsh Government, was for that very reason. At that time, when we first bid, it was about safe routes to school. As you all know, safe routes, many of you will know, safe routes has now become safe routes in communities as opposed to safe routes to school. And I went to Welsh Government, met with them in relation to this part of the bid, because you'll probably note from the report that they funded a lot of the work around the old Dyffryn Comprehensive as it was then. Obviously, it's Ysgol Brodir now. But wouldn't fund there because of the small numbers of the pupils. But nevertheless, there is no route out of there for any of the residents on foot. And that is a concern.
Okay, but there are lots of other places in the borough where there are no footpaths, which, feed a lot more people than coming from that area. And can I also ask, how much is, I know the scheme is 550k, but how much would it be now? Because as we know, materials and everything else has doubled in price. So can you give me the figure of what it would cost now?
We still believe that we're going to come in at around about 550,000. Obviously, there are different products in the market that are volatile. From the information that I'm having from some of our other construction sites in terms of base materials, there aren't too many variations in the civils area. There are obviously problems with steel supplies, but we're not using that in this case. But I think it's impacting more on my property colleagues in the architectural fields, because building products and specialist products are very, very volatile at the moment. So I'm hopeful that we're able to deliver this project within its budget.
But that was in 2018-19, the 550, so it's got to have gone up. There's no way it's going to have stayed at that price.
As I say, we've based the figure. We've just based the figure on a set of schedules of rates that we've had an external consultant review for our street care services. So we've been updating those figures over this period so that we can keep a tighter control on those figures. It's fair to say, though, Councillor, that until we get on the ground and we start to have those costs in, there will be variances potentially. But that is the case for every other project that the council is doing now or going into construction. Many of the cost estimates are prepared in advance of the works. So it's no different to any other project that we have on our books at present.
also, there are a lot of other wards that need things done. And
Councillor
we've been
Hale,
told there is no money. I just feel
Councillor
that this is,
Hale.
sorry, misappropriation of public wards. I mean,
thought you
is the
stopped
reason
there,
because
Councillor
it's a
Hale.
senior member?
Sorry.
Is it the reason because it's a senior member or was a senior member?
I'm
No,
sorry, I got to pull you up here now, Councillor Hale. This is not appropriate to be said in this meeting. If you've got anything to say to the officer and you want more information on this matter, please see the officer after the meeting in your own convenience. Sorry about that, but I've got to stop you. Thank you. Councillor, do you want to come in, Mr. Griffiths?
No, what I would say is, Councillor, look, we look at all projects right across the county borough equitably. If we don't think a project should be supported, or there is a reason from a road safety perspective that it doesn't meet criteria, then we are very straight with all members, and I'm sure members around here will know that. So from an officer perspective, we are, we treat everybody equitably.
Councillor Griffiths, you want to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you very much. Looking at it from a road safety aspect, when people come out to this estate, if this gets to go ahead, they can safely get to the A48 by walking or cycling. The question is, what if somebody wants to turn left and go towards Pyle on the Kenfig Industrial Estate? Are we going to be addressing that as a road safety aspect in future, and that will be turned into a cycle pathway?
Yeah, I suppose in this respect, Councillor, we are reviewing the active, or my colleagues in planning are out to consultation in terms of active travel routes as well. There are, obviously we'd like to put a path there and link it with the communities in across county. So that would be a joint proposal that we need to consider with our colleagues in Bridgend County Borough Council. And we, as you quite rightly say, we are trying to join up communities all across the county in that respect. So I will need to speak to my planning colleagues to see if that is featuring on the active travel future plans. But certainly if it's achievable, then I don't see why we shouldn't, and I would say that would be the case right across the county borough, really, where we'd like to have better active travel links.
You want to come back?
Yeah, yes, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Griffiths. It's as always the clarity. I would like to just ask a question on the letter that was received by the Borough Council from the members of the two enclaves there, and it says in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, you can imagine our delight when we were told after all this time the scheme to place a footpath from St David's Park right up to the main A48 have finally been approved and fully funded by the council, and work commenced in April of this year. And then it says they're deeply disappointed that the work had been cancelled. Can you elaborate on that? If this is coming before unless I missed something, if this is becoming before Cabinet now, how is it, whenever this letter was written prior to this meeting, that it's been approved and fully funded? I don't know. I've been on this Streetscene committee since I came onto council, and I've never seen this, unless I was absent, that it's come through. And yet it said it's fully approved and funded.
Yeah, I think, yes, certainly, Chair. What has taken place is that that we've got a group of officers within the local authority that sit on what was known as the Capital Programme Steering Group, where all capital projects, grants, revenue, pressures, unforeseen incidents across the County Borough Council, for example, there may be flooding in the county, or landslides or something of that nature, or a fire in a school, for example. We consider those at what they call this Capital Programme Steering Group. Now, that group has been in operation for some time, but following a recent review, there's been a request to review the procedures around how schemes are approved. So, albeit that there was an allocation of money made, this was one of the schemes that the group believed had approval, but subsequently it was established that it hadn't actually been incorporated and approved fully by the council. So as part of that review, I was asked to bring a paper to this board to share this information with you, to ensure that members are cited on the proposal, and to consider it in terms of its proposal from a road safety perspective. So the money was allocated. It seems to me it's a technicality in that it didn't actually get approved as part of the major capital programme, which would normally be the case. So that's why we are here today.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Griffiths?
Yes, please, if you don't mind. My concern is, I can understand all that, the officers planning and looking at funding, but what I can't, what I'd like to explain is how the public in that area were told that it was fully funded and approved. How did they get that information?
Well,
or why should they have that information?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You know, the letter.
Councillor Griffiths, I think, you know, if you want to take this further, please see the officer after the meeting. I'll leave you finish your part.
Yeah, but it's all right saying go and see the officer. We are the scrutiny committee, and I'm trying to scrutinise.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's going beyond what scrutinise is.
May I come back, Chair, Councillor Griffiths? Look, to be quite honest with you, I sit on the as of late on the Capital Programme Steering Group, and generally when I'm told that there's going to be an allocation of funding as a technical officer, rightly or wrongly, I take it that once that group has decided that a project is to go ahead, then I tend to action the work, and it's on that basis that I've done many schemes. So it was regrettable that I didn't realise that it hadn't had a final sign off, and that's how my team ended up communicating then with the community, because we were about to start work when we were asked to pause the project, so that it actually got its formal approval. So you know, if there's anybody to blame, I suppose I'd have to hold my hand up and say look, I on the basis of that money being allocated, I moved on the project, which I have always done it in that way. So I've been pulled up on it. There are things that my colleagues in finance are also putting corrective measures in place to ensure that doesn't happen again, and that officers don't proceed in that way in the future. But you know, that's where we are with it, Councillor Griffiths. It was I took it forward on goodwill and on the basis that it had an allocation of funding.
Thank you, Mr. Griffiths. Can I just one more question, and it's a general question really. It says on the report that this project during the year of 2018-2019, the local ward member during the member's surgery prioritised the Water Street scheme over any other works in the Margam ward. Now, my question is really, it's not about the actual member, or is can we, as when we go into these members' surgery, can we have a breakdown on what the allocation of monies throughout the wards are? Because £550,000 allocated to the members' surgery, if this is worded right, I'd like to get £550,000 in my ward, and for improvements, and just if we could all the members could have a breakdown of the money spent in their wards through the members' surgery. Thank you very much, Chair.
Chair, if I may come back, and I may need to defer to my colleague Mike Roberts on this. I don't actually manage the members' surgeries, but my understanding is that there were allocations to start to look at a feasibility on this project, but a project of this scale would never be able to be funded, in my view, but Councillor Mike Roberts, sorry, may be able to further expand on this point, could be actually afforded out of that £1.8 million pot of funding. So that's why it ended up coming out of that programme and going into a capital programme steering group for consideration for investment by the capital programme. And I think that's happened in many areas, both in highways and property in the past. I don't know, Mike, I think there is, we have the information in terms of spend across ward, but also what I was going to say is that we have an asset management approach as well that Mike Roberts reviews and manages, and some of that funding out of that 1.8 million is prioritised onto essential works that are required on the highway network, including surfacing, barrier protection, and other, safety hazards that may come to light from those asset inventory surveys. So, Mike, I don't know if you'd like to make any further comments.
Mr. Roberts, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I would just comment that the last few years, obviously, I've sent every member a briefing note in advance of the members' surgery process, setting out the available budget and the process, and you'll know from that it's on average it's about 40,000, I think, per ward if it was to be averaged out. Of course, it's not averaged out because sometimes there's a bridge in one area that needs repairing, or there's a flood, a drainage problem causing flooding in another area that needs to be addressed. So it's never on the basis of an average, but yeah. David is quite right that a scheme of that sort of scale and nature, as set out in the briefing note that I sent to all members, would not come under the Highways and Engineering programme. But as David has mentioned, sometimes members do ask for some feasibility work on things, and that is if that can be accommodated, that is put into the programme, and various members have had various bits of feasibility into potential schemes in their ward, which, as David said, can then move on. They may move forward to a traffic scheme or some other scheme later on. So that's the process, which is all set out in the briefing note that everyone gets. And yes, we've got lots of information, and at the end of the day, you all as members can have what you want.
Thank you for that. Councillor Keogh, you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. Look, these large amounts, there's nothing unusual about it at all. In my member surgery going back 89 years ago, we applied for funding for the A4107 Sepi Harry Pennakai Road, which leads from Talbot to the Rhondda Valley. We spent a total of 1.1 million. So that will tell you how much we had to put installed into that road to make it safe. So there's nothing unusual about it.
Thank you for that. I would like now to call in the local member, Councillor Rob Jones. Would you like to say or any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's quite a bit I'd like to say on some of the comments that have been raised. The first thing I want to do, though, is to actually point out there's an error in the report on page 211 and 212. It mentions the speed limit being reduced from 50 to 40 miles per hour on the A48. The A48 is a national speed limit road, and the single carriageway on an A road is 60 miles per hour. So therefore that would be incorrect. It was a reduction of 60 down to 40, but only in a specific area towards the junction just past Water Street. From that point on, it remains a national speed limit, and that's another priority of mine going forward, is to get the whole of that road, but I've held that in abeyance until the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is decided on that particular area. I first of all have to thank Dave Griffiths and Joyce Smith for the input that they've had with this project over many years. And I'm really disappointed in some of the comments that have been passed by members of the opposition, personally towards me, and in particular towards this project. You see, a report sometimes, if you start reading a report halfway through, you may jump to a conclusion at the end, and you may not know the prelude to that report. I suppose in essence, it could very well be listening to a tape recording and being taken out of context and finding the result of that is not what you actually think about it. The developments in the area are dromedary developments. They were put there as a result of a golf course that went into the area. And one of the things that I've always prided myself on is that when I have actually been asked to make decisions, when I was Councillor Hale, the senior member of this authority, I actually visited the area to see what impact it would have in those areas. For example, Pontrdawe, Pontrdawe, Ystalfera flooding, Langy Bridge in Neath, Pontrdawe Arts Centre, and the Blaengrach Bridge that was washed away in a storm. And that cost £800,000, and the concern of that community was they had a 2-mile detour to get to Neath. They had no footpath. And I signed an urgency action to ensure that that village and that community maintained their safety. So it's all about perspective. I've been after this pavement for 8.5 years. 8.5 years I've raised it at members' surgeries. Joyce Smith will tell you that I was the instigator to apply for the grants with Welsh Government to get the safe routes to schools. And you constantly referred to the fact that there are only 8 children down there. Well, let me clarify you. There are 95 properties down there. 203 people live down there, and that's without the children in the area, all of whom fall within the 2 and 3 mile walk to school category. The other thing that you will not be aware of, having done this for 8.5 years, is that I agreed with officers to have no spend in my ward other than that what they classed as essential. I made no recommendations for work in my ward over the past couple of years in order to save the money to fund this project. That's the sacrifice that I made. I wonder how many others have done that. No requests from me at all, as this was my priority. But many people won't know that. Many people jump to conclusions, and unfortunately, sometimes that's the only exercise people's brains get. Many years ago, in the 80s, before this council was formed, we had a county council and borough councils. And there's a little village, not just up the road from me, called Goitra. And Goitra didn't have a footpath leading from the Talbot area to the village. And a very dear friend of mine by the name of Denise Kingdom, who I happened to have worked with during that time, got killed on that road. She was knocked down by a car walking on the road because there was no footpath. And West Glamorgan County Council pretty damn quick put a footpath into that area, which remains to this day. And I found it quite strange because I've often asked, what's the cost of a life? And this report, for the first time in all my work in life, provides me with a fiscal analysis in relation to how much a life costs. £2 million for the individual and up to £4 million for the wider community. That's a staggering amount of money. And this project is £550,000. But to go back to Councillor Hale's question in relation to costs and increase, when I first asked for this footpath in 2013, long before she was a member, it was £230,000. The plans had been drawn, but we were in the middle of austerity. And that's one of the reasons why we couldn't afford to put this footpath in. But Mr. Griffiths has alluded to the fact that TD Bridge, because the heavy goods vehicles couldn't go down to the Amazon site and the Kemfic Industrial Estate, was lowered at considerable cost. And what has happened now is that you've got 44-ton articulated lorries going down a B road to access that site. There is no footpath at all, and the pandemic has highlighted the need for people to exercise locally. The counter argument is there was no cars on the road. Well, in fact, there's always traffic on that road because it feeds the Kemfic Industrial Estate. And what you also have to bear in mind is that the Margam ward is the largest geographical ward in the county borough. It may not have the population, but it certainly has a network of roads that far exceeds the others. You cannot put a life with a figure. It's as simple as that. Coming to Councillor Griffiths' point about the community being told, I told them. I sent them all a letter. Why did I send them a letter? Well, again, because Councillor Griffiths and Councillor Hale are unaware of the processes of how council runs. The CPSG, the Capital Programme Steering Group, has been in being since 2002. That's where unfunded projects were taken. And since 2002, when that money was allocated from the CPSG, officers took it that they were then funded, and this was funded by the CPSG in 2020. And I was informed in 2020 that the monies had been put aside over a 2-year period. A spend of approximately 275 within those 2 years each year. So naturally, having fought for 8.5 years to get this payment in, I was delighted to be able to tell my residents that in fact it had been funded. However, there was a glitch in the system, and that's why it's here today. So the questions that Councillor Griffiths and Councillor Hale should be asking is not the ones that you've been asking. You should be asking, why is it taking so long and delayed in getting a safe route that you take for granted in your wards because you're in an urban ward? These people live in a rural part of a ward. Are we uncaring enough that we don't want to protect the people in our community? I think it's absolutely appalling that you are looking at cost when I'm trying to save lives. I am absolutely appalled. I thank Dave Griffiths in relation to trying to take the blame for what has gone on here, but the blame doesn't rest with Dave Griffiths. The blame rests higher up the chain, I can assure you. But doing my diligence as a local ward member, that's what I've been fighting for the past 8.5 years. And I'm sorry to have to end on this, but Councillor Hale, you made a statement and it is recorded, so it won't be disputed. You alleged misappropriation of funds because I was the former leader of this council. It is recorded. I will take that matter further. You cannot allege that I have done anything wrong or this council has done anything wrong without evidence. That is a personal attack on me and I will not tolerate it. I've tolerated it enough in the past and been exonerated completely from any wrongdoing. This is not going to be an albatross around my neck. And if members of the opposition think they can do it and roll it out at any time, you are very much mistaken. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. We move on now then. This item is for decision. The recommendation are on page 215. Can I please have a proposer and a second?
I move, Chair. I move.
Can I have a seconder, please?
I second, Chair.
Thank you for that. The final item we have chosen to scrutinise in the agenda, item 14, which is the report on the traffic regulation order from Glais to Pontrdawe. Do officers have anything to add, or shall we move straight to questions?
Yes, perhaps, Chair, if you don't mind, if I could just give a little background to this. Our colleagues in, obviously, the vast majority of the part of this network falls within our adjoining council, the City and County of Swansea. And for some time, they've been concerned about the number of accidents that have taken place on the highway network there, which was almost just about on the border of our county and that of the City and County of Swansea. And there's been some very nasty accidents there. It is a fast road. I think that people do speed there, and the evidence is has been shown to that effect. And our colleagues feel that the only way we could control the speed of traffic on this part of the network would be to reduce the speed limit there. Now, a part of the network is already at this speed within our County Borough Council, and we just have a small, very small section that we need to change the order on, which will allow then the whole part of this A467 to have average speed cameras placed on it. They seem to work very well. You do get a lot more compliance with cameras of this nature. And again, not going into any details, there have been, as I say, several accidents. I think we've even had school transport vehicles caught up in accidents on there as well. So from a road safety perspective, myself and our officers were content to support the proposal. Obviously, because of the county crossover points, it would be, I think, remiss of us as officers and members, really, if we were to not support that request from the City and County of Swansea. So I've nothing further to add, if that helps in setting the scene for questions, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Griffiths, you wanted to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. I put my hand up before this item was brought to Council, and I'd like to reply to Councillor Jones's rant, if I may, because a rant it was. And let's be clear.
I'm sorry.
No, let's be clear, Chair. Let's be clear, Chair. He had a go about road safety to myself. And one of the questions I asked was if there are going to be any plans, to put in any more footpaths towards the Margam estate. Now, I don't think that is trying to not have road safety. And if he wants to come to our meetings to rant when this is a scrutiny meeting, no, Chair, I can't. This is a scrutiny meeting, and I have scrutinized off. Peter, you can stop your face.
Excuse me, do you mind if, sorry, Chair, can I come in just 1 second?
Yes, Chloe, come in now.
Sorry, can we just deal with this item at hand, and if we need to go back, we can? Because we need to just deal with, because we've moved on to this item now. I know Councillor Rosalind Davis had a question.
Yeah.
And then we can, if we need to move back to the agenda item, we can. Is that okay?
There's a terrible lot on. No, I'm not on mute.
You're on mute, Wyndham. Wyndham, you're on mute. You keep talking, you're on mute.
Sorry, Councillor.
Councillor Griffiths, could you wait and we go back to this item 13? Because I've just gone on 14. Councillor Davis has got her hand up to ask a question on 14. So I'll bring Councillor Davis in to ask the question, and then I'll come back to you on item 13.
Thank you very much, Chair. I welcome this proposal for traffic regulation on Ffordd Pontrdawe from Glais to Pontrdawe, and you've answered some of the questions that I was going to ask, actually, David, first. However, I was going to ask regarding if there were average speed cameras going to be placed there. So I assume that the average speed cameras will be on the Swansea side?
No, they'll be on both parts of the network. So one will be at the adjoining point in the City and County of Swansea, and then there'll be one in Neath, Talbot at the other part of the network, so that we capture the average speed right across the length of that road. So there will be a camera in Neath, Talbot as well.
I'm so glad to hear that, because there's been lots of discussions regarding this road, and of course it's the same road that feeds into Gordograg from Pontrdawe as well, and we have the same problem in Gordograg ward, but of course that's for another day. But I really welcome this proposal, and I'm just wondering where will it be advertised, because it's very difficult to advertise on the 4067 itself.
It's a good question. I've got Hassan. I think Hassan is with us today. Obviously, it'll have to be advertised in the press, and I think we actually post it on our website also. But they will need to put probably signage not far off the junction of where Tesco's is. It Hassan? Is Hassan here?
Yeah. Yes, we will have to advertise. Sorry, Dave. We will have to advertise it by the roundabouts by Tesco and in Glais roundabout, and plus on the net and in the local papers.
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much, and I hope that the works will be carried out pretty soon, because it is a dangerous road. but really it's no more dangerous than the path from Pontrdawe up to Gordon, because lots of accidents happen there as well.
No, and in that regard, obviously it's a grant that was submitted by the City and County of Swansea that took the lead on this particular one on cross-border. So the money has to be spent by March the 31st next year. So the preparatory work is probably all in hand. We just got to go through the legal process now on this part of the order. My colleagues in the City and County of Swansea are doing a parallel exercise on their part of the network, so we're aligned on that. In terms of your point about Glais, perhaps we can talk to you about that in the future, and we can perhaps get some data gathered, but we'll talk about that outside the meeting if that's okay, Councillor Davies.
Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Is there any other member wishes to ask a question on the item 14? I can't see there is. This item is for decision. The recommendation are on page 234 and 35. Can I please have a proposer?
I move, Chair.
I second, Chair.
Thank you ever so much for that. Before I go on to the next item, I go back on item 13. Councillor Griffiths, I think now we call Mr. Griffiths legal. Sorry, could you come back, Councillor Griffiths, for me to know exactly? Because I would like to, I asked the chair, I don't feel this should be carried on here. And I think it should go to democratic and to legal, but I will allow you to come in.
Thank you, Chair. My point is, we are a scrutiny committee. We are put here to scrutinise, and we try to scrutinise fairly and do our best. I'm given papers to scrutinise, which I do, and bring up points which I think need to be put for scrutiny. Councillor Jones came back and said about the road safety. One of the questions I asked was, are the council planning, when people come out of those estates, to go left towards the estates, the industrial estates, which not everybody wants to go right. I don't see that as interfering or not being something about road safety.
Thank you for that. And I think
the other thing is, if you'll bear with me, because I do feel strongly about this, the member for the area, yes, come back and answer the questions, as I haven't got a problem with that. But the way he was ranting, I don't think that should be taking place in the scrutiny committee. And as the other point about the letter, where he admits himself that he told the members of the public, right? I haven't got a problem with that. It's just that this was on this scrutiny papers, and I asked the question. A civil answer would have been perfectly right. And instead of the rant that we had, and this is not the place for ranting. This is a scrutiny committee. And if we don't scrutiny, what are we doing here? Wasting our time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Griffiths. If you've got any other queries you would like to make, you're quite welcome to go to Democratic or to head of legal. Councillor Jones, the local member, you've got your hand up. Would you like to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a point of clarity. I answered Councillor Griffiths' scrutinising questions in relation to this matter. As I understand it, there is no plans to actually put a footpath further than from St David's, because the domiciliary developments in that area all go to the right, because that's where the facilities are. And there are only 4 other properties to the left as you come out of these villages that head down towards the Kempvig industrial estate. So the road safety aspect is for those that live in the area to be able to access the main A48 and the bus routes, because there's no bus routes. Why I was incensed, and if I've upset your feelings, Wyndham, I apologise. Why I was incensed is the statement made by Councillor Hale, which is recorded, and I've already sent an email to the head of legal services regarding this matter while we've been speaking, is that she alleged that this could be misappropriation of funds because I was the former leader of this council. How would you like that, Mr. Griffiths? How would you feel being alleged to have done something wrong? I was not very happy with that. That's the rant. I apologise to the committee for that. But I will have no one questioning my integrity, my honesty, or my credibility in relation to anything that's gone on, which everything that was alleged has been totally unfounded. And I make the point again. I am not going to be living with an albatross. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, past, present, or future, report it appropriately, as I have just done. Simple as that. So I apologise for the rant. You are right. But how would you like it to be called corrupt? Because in essence, those terminology was used in relation to that statement. So I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. You still got your hand up?
Right, sorry, Chair. I will remove my hand.
Thank you ever so much. We go back now on to our street scene scrutiny papers, which is the forward work programme, the street scene and engineer forward work programme for noting. Chloe, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you, Chair. The forward work programme is for noting, but we do have our forward work programme workshop coming up on the 17th of October, I believe.
Thank you ever so much for that. Item 7, there are no urgent items, Chloe.
No, there are no urgent items, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will now close the meeting. I thank you all for attending. Take care, keep safe, God bless.